Welcome to what RIAs need to know about cybersecurity in 2023. We will get started promptly at the top of the hour. This webinar is packed full of resources that you need to know as an advisor and financial professional at the end of 2023 going into 2024. First, to get started, there's a little series of buttons along the bottom. You can use the Q&A button to ask us questions during the webinar. Right now, will you do me a favor and click on that Q&A icon and make sure it comes up? Before we get further into it, let's make sure that we've got all the basics working here. If you can hear me, will you just type "I can hear you" in the little area where there's a spot to type a question? Okay, great, awesome, thank you. One more request. If you can see a little kitten on the screen, type "I can see you." Fantastic, thank you. Finally, you are going to want to grab a pencil or something to write with. There is a lot we are going to go over, and you will want to be able to refer to it later. I'm Jonathan Addington, the host of your webinar today. I am the founder and president of both JM Addington Technology Solutions and Cybersecure RIA. I began in tech in 2004 and formed JM Addington Technology Solutions in 2010. And as we became more and more focused on financial advisors, we formed Cybersecure RIA specifically to secure advisors. Today, we have a full staff to support RIAs across their full range of needs. All right, but why listen to me? I've been doing this for a very long time, both personally and professionally. I am already a recognized expert in the industry, and I literally wrote the book on this. This is the number one theme of our webinar today, and that is cybersecurity is coming for you. That means both the risks and what you need to do to prevent and mitigate them, because cybersecurity risk is business risk. And today, robust cybersecurity measures are a must across the board. Even things that might not have affected you in the past are going to affect you today. The SEC is introducing regulations right and left. You can't escape. You go to FINRA and their requirements are ramping up as well. You go to the states, they also have regulations that are similar. Even the red states that are typically pro-business and anti-regulation are getting in on it here. It is increasingly difficult even to get cybersecurity insurance if you cannot demonstrate that you are doing the right things. And finally, you are a target for hackers. It's going beyond just mass spam today. Hacking is both a big business and a small business. Attackers of all sizes make money off of cyber attacks today, and some people just do it for the fun of it. There is no way to avoid it anymore. You have to protect your business and your clients from real losses, from regulatory risk, and from the inability to mitigate those risks. And you are either going to live with a higher level of cybersecurity risk, or you're going to up your game. Those are your choices. Those are binary. And remember, your cybersecurity risk is your business risk. Quality statistics about cybercrime against small businesses are very hard to come by. So today, we're going to bypass some of that FUD involved to give you a realistic version of what small businesses are up against instead of the scare tactics. First, every business is at risk today. There is no business I'm aware of that hasn't had at least a passive attack against it. But it is not true that most small businesses cease to be an ongoing concern after a cyber attack. That's a made-up statistic that has been thoroughly debunked at this point. We do know the attacker's playbook. According to the 2023 Verizon Data Breaches Investigation Report, there's a minimal difference in the tactics used by attackers against large versus small businesses. So we do know how the attackers operate. We also know that it is costly and it will cause downtime. Whether you're paying the ransom or paying deductibles or paying tech staff to clean things up or possibly acquiring new hardware, all of this costs a lot. Often tens of thousands is the minimum for a small attack. Hundreds of thousands is possible. Let's look at some realistic statistics from the industry leader Kaseya. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see people's expectations on having a phishing attack launched against them next year. That's pretty good. It's probably 100%, but this is close. You can see just below that ransomware amounts are all over the place, with roughly 75% of ransoms being between $1,000 and $25,000. But the downtime is higher than what most businesses expect over on the right. While they're headed in the right direction, my experience is that most organizations think through the first step of the attack. How do you deal with that immediate threat? And then do I have a backup? But they fail to consider how hard it is to take that backup and get it back into operations, especially for significant amounts of data. They fail to consider how to reconcile that data. That backup is from a specific point in time, say last week or last month. You didn't lose all of your data, you lost a portion of it. Now you need to get that lost portion back to the backup point, put that into place, and then whatever data has happened since then. And you need to be able to communicate with clients and vendors and regulators, and that can be tricky if your communications were part of that attack. The majority of attacks are to profit the attackers. $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, that's going to go a long way in Russia or in China, and especially if that's $5,000 or $10,000 per day. This is a realistic look at on-the-ground cybersecurity reporting on any given day. You can see that there's a lot of information to be gleaned off of Twitter, email newsletters, other social media networks. And the message I'm trying to get across here is that there are new attacks literally every day. This stuff gets way more press in the cybersecurity and geeky communities than you're going to see. Most business leaders won't see this stuff any more than, say, I will see SEC updates on things like rules relating to security-based swap execution and registration and regulation of security-based swap execution facilities, whatever that means. Unless I'm visiting the trade publications, I'm not going to see that, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Let's go to the first place of business risk that we're going to focus on, the SEC, FINRA, and state regulations. The SEC is introducing regulations right and left, and you can't escape and go to FINRA. Their requirements are looking very similar, and multiple states have introduced and passed legislation aimed at advisors or businesses more broadly that, again, is very similar. Even red states that are typically pro-business and anti-regulation are getting in on this. Why does the SEC want to bring this up now? It's what we just covered. Cyber attacks are going up everywhere exponentially. I will not spend a lot of time here. Most of you know that the SEC put out a cybersecurity rule for registered investment advisors a year and a half ago, but they have not put out a finalized version yet. We can talk more about that in the Q&A at the end if you would like. But in that rule, they go out of their way to show why they believe they have the statutory authority to put out the rule in the first place. And they go back and forth between what they're trying to accomplish, say, protect investors, and then the statutory authority that they have to do that. And so the in-between, the lines interpretation really is that, hey, the SEC, we can enforce all of these things already under multiple existing rules. We're just trying to be nice people and consolidate it into one single rule. And they did pass a substantially similar rule for publicly traded companies at the July meeting. And they actually have another outstanding rule for broker-dealers. And all three of these are very similar in scope and requirements. The SEC leans on fiduciary duty for their cybersecurity rule. They see cybersecurity as something that affects investors because it is. So regardless of finalization of that specific rule, this is a cornerstone they can stand on either way. So let's take a quick look at disclosure changes in that rule. If the rule is not finalized, it's not clear if disclosures are going to change. They have statutory authority to change disclosures in some places, but not in all places. However, even if the rule did not become official, consumer protection laws are already moving in the direction towards more disclosures. The SEC wants to put out more disclosures, but they're not mandatory yet. So here's a couple of the big things the SEC has in their proposed rule, and it's in line with the public company cybersecurity rule. First, there are changes to the ADV Part 2 form. The SEC wants to know when you've been attacked, and some of this will be confidential and some of it will not be. Then there are the changes to the CRS. This part is definitely not confidential. Everybody on this webinar has a link to their CRS at the bottom of their webpage. Can you imagine adding a new section that lists every successful cyber attack against your firm in the last 5 years? That is something that's in the proposed rule. And there's a completely different proposed rule that leans on SP for consumer notifications and written records. This rule is aimed at BDs and RIAs. It increases disclosure requirements along with record-keeping requirements. So it's incredibly clear that the SEC is moving in the direction of more disclosures. The SEC will be addressing cybersecurity risk and disclosures whether or not the rule becomes finalized. We just don't know the specifics yet. If you are a hybrid, FINRA standards aren't any lower. Here is a list of requirements that they have, and you can notice that this is for small firms. I'm not going to spend any more time here because of how significant the overlap is with SEC and other regulations. In my home state of Tennessee, they have a similar rule similar to the SEC rule, except the state's rule went into effect in July. And as Tennessee notes, there are 6 other states that have implemented an identical rule and 8 others that have very similar rules. Interestingly to me, 5 of the 6 states and Tennessee are solidly red states, suggesting that this isn't a politically divisive issue. So what you need to know here is the regulations are here, they're industry-wide, they're at multiple levels, and if you do not address that, you are leaving your business at risk. I don't have to tell you how much non-compliance affects you. Cybersecurity risk is business risk. Let's take a look at insurance. It is increasingly difficult to get cybersecurity insurance if you cannot demonstrate that you are doing the right things. This headline is from a cybersecurity insurance company, part of their 2023 report for Q1 and Q2. They show that claim severity are up across the board and not just for large firms. These colors are revenue bands, and you can see that even the smallest firms with revenues under $25 million see a typical attack severity of $69,000 today. For insurance companies that are interested in making money, they do not want to pay out claims. And there are 2 ways that they can do that. They can either write policies and then deny the claims, or they can increase the requirements and the policy costs. And in reality, you are seeing both. This is a real-life self-questionnaire for a cybersecurity insurance form. This is a standard one, and you can see that this is just Section 7, and there is a whole host of things to go over. And on all of these, you can check no on some or all of them and straight up have your application denied, or you can select yes and don't do all the things and have claims denied, or you can check yes and go through and do all of those things. You can guess which one I'd recommend. And if you were paying attention a few slides ago, you'll see how many of the regulatory requirements actually overlap with the cybersecurity insurance requirements. And you know why? Because this is a good list of things to do to mitigate and prevent attacks. The news is not getting any better. The Wall Street Journal Cybersecurity Research Center found that insurance is getting harder to get. Premiums are increasing for the same coverage, and the coverage terms are becoming more restrictive. And the silver lining, if you can call it that, is that at least for most of you on the webinar, there's only a 3% chance that you're going to make a claim next year. Note that doesn't mean it's only a 3% chance that you're going to have an incident. The odds of that are a lot higher. Here's the deal. The insurance companies aren't going to cover you if you aren't doing your part. That's what it comes down to. So what happens if you can't get cybersecurity insurance? Can you withstand the fallout of an attack where the low-end cost is $10,000 to $70,000 per attack? What if that happens more than once? Because if you can't get the insurance, it's because you're not doing the right things today, which makes you an easy target, and you are likely to be attacked again. The risk from cybersecurity is about the risk to your firm, not about the risk to your computer. Finally, you are a target for hackers. It is going beyond mass opportunistic phishing emails today. In the past, the targeted companies were large household name firms like Target or the Home Depot or Equifax. Smaller firms typically were only caught up in opportunistic attacks, meaning they weren't a primary target, they were victims of mass spam, something along those lines. But that's changed today. Today, firms such as yours are the low-hanging fruit. While of course there are still attacks against large companies and those make the news, those are significantly more difficult to pull off. Most small firms are significantly easier to target and to penetrate, and they still have a pretty good payout from the attacker's perspective. I want to use my church as an example here just because it illustrates the point so clearly. This is a message supposedly from the lead pastor of the church I attend, a church I do IT support for, and this is asking if I'm on help desk. This is a classic spear phishing email, and down the line, the attacker's looking for a payout from the church of some way, shape, or form. And so here's the question. The bad guys are going to take the time to target my church specifically. Do you imagine that they will not target your firm? So let's go through an example of what an attack might look like. Let's look for an advisor in Atlanta and find a small firm. Prior to this example, I had no idea who this was. So for an attacker, what are we going to do? We're going to find their about page and look for two things. First, we want to know who looks like the most senior partner is. In the larger firm, it might be a COO. And then we're going to look for the person most likely to be a junior partner or an assistant. Next, we are going to look for Angie's contact information. And super helpful for me as an attacker, they have her email address right there on the page. From here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write an email supposedly from Janet, the senior partner, to Angie, and I'll ask Angie to click on a link or buy some gift cards or send a wire or contact some clients, whatever I think will get her to take the bait. And if we wanted to take it up another level, in 15 or 20 minutes, we can purchase a lookalike domain. We can use a free trial of Microsoft 365 to set up email. So we actually have a legitimate email provider, but we don't have to pay for it or leave behind some incriminating information like an address and credit card number. I actually gave this example to a firm during security training along with a couple of sample domains I thought an attacker would use against them. And a few months later, they came back and said that this exact attack was attempted against their firm. And I know that some of you are going to think something along the lines of, we'll just hide our email addresses or we won't put them on our website. First, this is going to seriously hamper your marketing efforts if people don't know how to get a hold of you. But second, a seventh grader can find your email addresses inside of about 30 seconds by running a dark web search. This is an example here. This is actually both email addresses and passwords. I'm not showing the passwords, but clearly we can see that the email addresses for this company is lastname@rolandco.net. This is everything that I need to know to finish the attack. So you're literally a target today. But why do hackers hack? Well, for fun and for profit. This is the estimated P&L for a large hacking operation out of Eastern Europe. This is a real organization. You could see gross sales of $180 million with commissions right below that of $126 million. Nice low operating expenses of $2 million for a net profit of $53 million. Can we call that EBITDA? Are they going to pay taxes? Anyway, that's about a 28% margin on $180 million. How would you like to be able to get that? Of course, like we do business in the United States, most criminal groups are not that large. They're smaller. Ironically, many of them operate under a partnership model, like most of you on this webinar. You probably remember from one of our earlier slides that the bulk of ransom amounts come in between $1,000 and $25,000. So let me ask you a question. If you were making that much per attack, how many attacks would you need per year to earn a comfortable living? 10, 100, maybe 500 if you were getting some just those lower ransom amounts. Now, how many attacks do you think an attacker would need to have a comfortable life in Moscow, where the average cost of living is somewhere between $900 for a single person and $2,400 a month for a small family? Do you imagine that with international sanctions hitting the Russian economy, hacking some small businesses would make for a pretty comfortable life? Do you imagine that hacking financial firms might look particularly enticing? And while less common, some people just hack for the fun of it. The hacking group Anonymous really epitomized this, hacking sometimes for fun, sometimes for a cause, and sometimes, well, they just weren't always clear about that. Or for about $19.99 today, I can purchase a DDoS attack and bring your website down within a few minutes, easily and before the end of the webinar. Helpfully, Bing even showed me this because it's popular. Or perhaps I can find a WordPress exploit and deface your website, again, just for fun. And it's easy. This is a search engine that indexes the internet for IoT devices, and this is a pretty simple search here. Here's one of the results from somewhere around Marietta, Georgia. Looks like an attacker can log on to their Windows 10 machine remotely and then access their security camera. And sometimes those security cameras are inside, not just outside. I mean, how creepy is that? And can you imagine that if you're a creepy kind of person, this might be fun to do? This happens. This isn't stuff we're making up here. These sorts of things happen literally every single day. There's nothing exceptional about the attack I walked you through, other than that it was a great example because it's easy to understand and it's easy to pull off. There are dozens of more types of attacks that are only slightly more technical, but that a seventh grader could still pull off. Cybersecurity is coming for you. The cyber attacks are going to come for your firm. You are going to be personally targeted if you haven't been already. While it is probably not the seventh graders that are coming for you, there are hackers out there who would like to make a profit off of your firm. And so again, this isn't about the cybersecurity risk. It's not about the risk to your machine or your laptop in front of you. It's about the risk to your business. So what can you do to protect your firm? First, educate your employees. They're one of the weakest links in your entire cybersecurity posture, and somewhere around 90% of attacks have a human element to them. Second, watch the dark web for leaked credentials. I used to be skeptical of this, but now somewhere between a plurality of attacks and most attacks involve stolen usernames and passwords. You need to know what's out there on the dark web version of Amazon for hackers. Next, implement DLP policies on your Microsoft 365, on your firewall, on your VPN, wherever it's applicable. These are the controls that detect and prevent sensitive data from leaving your organization. Implement and regularly review IAM, your Identity and Access Management Program. This is who has access to what. Do they have access to more than they need to have access to? How do you verify their identities? It's the need to know principle. And keep everything up to date. I know it sounds easy. It's not though. You've got computers, tablets, phones, kiosks, websites, and it goes well beyond the old Windows patching routine these days with so many different types of software living on your computer, all of which need to be kept up to date. So what is your next step? Get a free cybersecurity assessment from Cybersecure RIA. When was the last time you had an independent third-party cybersecurity assessment done for your company? How confident are you that you're in good shape today? Nobody ought to proofread their own work, and that includes me. The assessment that I'm offering is done by a group called Galactic Advisors. They are a cybersecurity firm out of Nashville, Tennessee, and this is the same company that assesses our own network and security. I asked the last person that we ran one of these for, what would you say to someone that wasn't sure if they wanted to get one of these? And what she said is, it was a big wake-up call. And this is something that I normally hear from RIAs after we've done one of these assessments. So get a free third-party cybersecurity assessment. We're not going to ask for passwords. You can involve your current IT if you want. We're not going to install anything on the computer. And what's the catch? There's no catch. I want to help you on your cybersecurity journey. I believe that everyone deserves to be secure. That includes you. That includes your clients. That includes American businesses at large. So you can get one of these free cybersecurity assessments on us, the same assessments that we do for our clients and that we do for ourselves. You can either drop your email address into chat or email cybersecurity to info@cybersecureria.com. And if you feel like that's too soon, you can download our ebook for RIAs at ria.tips/RIA-ebook. Again, remember one thing, cybersecurity is coming for you because your cyber risk is business risk. Will you do me one quick favor and give me some feedback? Put a 1 through 10 in the Q&A based on how well this webinar served you. Thank you for attending. Be sure to take that next step today. Don't go away with a head full of knowledge and an empty action plan. Again, you can drop your email address into chat, you can give us a call, you can visit our website, or you can email cybersecurity to info@cybersecureria.com. I will be around for a few minutes here to answer any questions that you may have.